Have you ever seen date palms growing in Central America? Because I hadn't, so I had to try it, and it's going surprisingly well. I love dates. I'm from Persia. I was born in Iran, and dates have always just been that nature's candy. If you don't like dates, I'm sorry, but you might have had a bad one. They are unique. There's so many varieties of them. They come from this region, arid region of northern Africa and the Middle East, and they're just delightful. And I couldn't imagine them being grown in Central America. But here are the conditions, right? So dates need 6 months of intense heat. Once the flowers begin, they also need to be pollinated by hand because we don't have the kind of pollinators that are native to the region and that would do the work. So when you have also hand pollination, you get a much higher fruit rate. What it takes is one male to, I don't know, 10, 20 females. And the technique is that you take a plastic bag or some kind of bag, and you shake the male pollen inside of it, and then you walk around to all the female plants and you shake the pollen inside the bag so that it pollinates all the females, right? But when this happens, so for us in Central America, my dry season starts around November. It's supposed to be November until May, but I mean, every season it kind of changes. But in that, what the dates want is that consistent heat, okay, the extreme heat, and without any rain. So what happens is if it starts to begin raining sooner than the end of its fruit production, the fruits will mold and they'll fall off, right? That humidity is not good for them. So it just happens that after a year of observation, it turned out my climate was just right for that. So doing some research, and wow, I mean, I've probably planted, I couldn't exaggerate this, probably 200 date seeds. And right now on the farm, I think I have about 30 of them established, right? So the technique for planting, or for germinating the seeds, are that after you eat them, you soak them in water for 24 hours. Then once they're soaked, you put a paper towel at the bottom of a Tupperware container and you put the seeds on top. You create the humidity, and then after a few weeks, the butts of those seeds will begin to sprout little roots. Once the roots are substantial, then you can put them in a planting bag, and the journey starts from there. But uniquely, like we mentioned, that dates are male and female. You don't know what your seed is going to give you, whether it's a male or female. And one way that you can find out, and this is how I'm finding out now, this is a 4-year-old date palm, by the way. So I'd say it's about 9 feet. No, if I'm 6 feet, this is the highest point is 7. But what's unique and what I'm noticing now is at the bottom, it's maybe tough to tell from this angle, but there are pups growing off the sides of these dates. So I'm gonna walk around and show you what some other sized date palms look like. But what those pups suggest is that you have a female. The females will produce identical clones to themselves. And on this property there are several varieties of dates. So these ones I bought online, and they're known as the common date palm. So I didn't really have a gauge for this. Like, I didn't realize at the very beginning that I consume so many dates and most of them are seeded, so why not plant them? And so in my seed buying spree this one evening online, I bought some date palms, and they kind of began that whole journey of germination. But so then kind of moving down, I have some medjool. There's some distinctly Persian dates. They're called, I forget what they're called. Do these? Anyway. Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 varieties here. This is I believe, I can't even guess anymore. Honestly, I planted them, and then every year only a few would survive. My germination rate did increase, which is helpful, but still, we lost a lot of them. But to give you context, I mean, this is a 2-year-old date palm, right? It could even be 3, so this could mean 1 year in a bag, wherein it looks like just a single shoot sticking out of the bag. And then in planting it, this is what year 2 looks like. So this little guy right here, this is Sana. Hey, come here, baby. This little guy right here is only in its 2nd year. So now it could be due to a few different reasons. Maybe there's a rock underneath, or maybe not so ideal conditions. See, these dates, they're really susceptible to rot. So what you want to do, especially if you don't have well-draining soil, is create some mounds. The location of these dates is in a citrus field. So right here I have, I don't know, something like 50 citrus trees. These are sour oranges. Oh my god, which by the way are in bloom right now. The bloom is past, but you have these little orange buds, and the bloom of orange flowers, it just smells amazing. But yeah, more context. So I didn't necessarily follow that advice about being on a mound where this is a 1-year-old date palm. So it's got about 4 or 5 leaves sticking out, and it doesn't look substantial until about year 2, and then even year 3 it's not that much taller. I mean, this is really a game of patience. But when you have dates in a region where most people get their sugar from cane sugar or some alternative sources of sugar and just have never tried the delectableness, I mean, it's a game changer. And the fact that one date palm, a female, in its mature years will produce over 100 pounds of fruit just from one tree it's pretty impressive. And so right here, you can tell by my 6-month-old puppy that this date palm, this is in its 3rd year. So again, growing really slowly, but once they reach this threshold, they will just explode in growth. But now as they're maturing, the thing I'm looking for, this is nice, it's a little pineapple right next to the date. The thing I'm looking for is this. Ooh, by the way, these the fronds of the date palm are incredibly stabby. Yeah, very sharp and keeps the birds away. But right here, this is a pup. And this pup suggests that we have a female. So I've counted, of the mature ones, I'd say about, like, there's 2 males amongst them. And that's fine, you want some males, but we want more females. Right? And what's really amazing, I mean, if you've seen these like Arabic and Northern African styled homes where they have entryways made of date palms, that's what I'm going for. So right here at the entrance to the property, there's 6 of them. And so you roll in and soon it'll look like this giant palm entryway. So it's super exciting. So when it comes to the propagation of these pups, I have a lot of spaces. On the farm that are within this orange field. The thing I was going for is interplanting the dates with the sour oranges. I had this belief that these sour oranges, being surrounded by the date palm, which is going to be flowering and fruiting at the same time that these guys are finishing their fruits, that somehow it might sweeten the sour oranges, which could be great, and if not, whatever. Because in this intense sun, it's kind of nice to eventually give the oranges a tiny bit of shade, because as they mature, I noticed that a lot of oranges will lose their production ability. The interplanting is also just something that looks really nice, whether or not it sweetens the dates or not, sweetens the oranges or not. But now, when it comes to the propagation, so knowing that this is a female because it's producing its offspring, then I'm going to be able to take all the spots where the dates hadn't survived and be able to interplant them there. And as well, be able to share them with others. So that's a really exciting one. And also expanding the production. But one thing to look out for is when you're propagating, what you want to make sure is that the pup is independent of the mother. As in, it's all the leaves that were kind of at the base of that have died back and have moved away, and that the pup is now, you can visibly see that it's growing its own roots. And when you have the visibility, you want to take a spade or something with a clean cut and be able to separate the mother from the pup, therefore not damaging either. And then again, when it comes to planting them, right, what I've noticed is these dates, vegetative state is heavy in the wet season, and in the dry season you don't see any of that. So the transplanting will be strictly in the midst of the rainy season, so it has plenty of time to establish and create new roots. Alright, one last note, and this is very important. So when it comes to all coconuts, all palm trees, including coconuts, and now the date palms, I want to stress the importance of not bothering these fronds. Alright, these are the palm leaves as they fall. So if you look closer at the trunk, you can see that they are still connected. And in some way, whether it's they're creating coverage on the soil around them, or they are, whatever means, they're still connected to the mother. And yes, I understand that, well, if you get a house cleaner or a gardener, they'll come, and they'll do this all the time with coconuts, where they'll chop all the fronds back, and they'll call it cleaning up the trunk of the tree. And I mean, for whatever aesthetic purpose, I think people are missing the point. For all trees, their leaves are all the minerals and nutrients that they could condense into their leaves that photosynthesize, and until that energy generating machine is done, those leaves then fall. And yes, in the West we rake our leaves, which, I mean, look, if you want a clean lawn, then fine, that's necessary. But for my coconuts, I'd rather do this. All of those leaves will eventually break down and will create a mound. And the same thing applies to the date palms. If we allow those leaves to fall, and whenever it's natural, whenever they're ready, they'll almost disconnect, or they'll just be so tender you can pluck them right off. But until that point, all of that buildup, all of those little bits, I don't think you can see anything from here, they are making up the integrity of the trunk. Okay, and when it comes to coconuts, you can tell, or maybe you'll start to notice now that I've said this, but you can tell that the trunk is skinnier on a coconut that's been molested too many times. Like if you go and chop it back, if you clean up all the fronds, then you're stripping the trunk of those stem cells, right? Whatever it takes, whatever it was creating, whatever it spent all that time putting energy into and still being attached to itself, all of that is going away. And then in terms of weeds, right? If those fronds fall naturally, then they create shade, and that shade benefits the soil, right? And yes, vines will grow over them, and they could become messy. And at that point, you wish to cut them back, then that's fine. But especially in the wet season, I'd say just leave them alone. So I hope you learned something new about dates. If you have anything to say about dates in Central America, please share. I am learning. This is a journey. And I would love to know what you think. Good luck. Happy growing.